This is Michael Popok, Legal AF After Dark. George Santos should be After Dark. We shouldn't be having to continue to talk about him, but we do because a plea deal that the government, the Department of Justice, the Eastern District of New York, sitting in Brooklyn, Long Island Division, prosecuting George Santos, has filed in the wake of failed plea bargaining, a plea deal that fell apart because George Santos wouldn't plead guilty. The government, the Department of Justice, fired back with a new indictment, a superseding or amended indictment, bringing another 10 counts against George Santos, making him a 23-count felony indicted person. This time for credit card fraud and other fraud related to stealing money from his donors without them even knowing about it in certain circumstances. And he's in big trouble because his treasurer has already pled guilty and is cooperating against him with the Department of Justice. Karen Friedman Agnifilo and I, on the midweek edition of Legal AF, analyzed all of that from her prosecutor perspective and my criminal defense lawyer perspective. We put it all together. Here's the clip. Speaking of somebody that should be off the air, we shouldn't have to ever talk about again, but unfortunately we do. Representative George Santos from the Fighting Third District. I don't know where it is exactly. It's a section that overlaps Queens and Long Island in New York. He got himself elected on false pretenses, and he's about to pay the consequences for that. There was a plea deal in place. He pled not guilty back in May to the, at the time, 13-count indictment. Now the prosecutors have flipped the treasurer for Santos. They're still working on Sam Mealy, who's another guy that worked with Santos, and the focus of it is the financial and fundraising fraud and the subsequent election form filing fraud, because he's required to file certain elections forms and certificates saying that he's raised a certain amount of money, who he's raised it from, if he's made a loan to his campaign, how much is the loan, what's the source of the loan, and those types of things. Well, George Santos just made up all those numbers, and or he grifted them, and or according to the new indictment, he used some donors' credit card information without their knowledge and kept hitting it over and over again for tens of thousands of dollars of donations, some of which ended up in his own personal bank account, some of which ended up supporting the campaign so that they would show numbers on a quarterly basis that were required, or that he could get help from the Republican National Committee because he raised, let's say, $250,000 in a given period. If he didn't raise it, he wouldn't have gotten their support. And suddenly, miraculously, a guy that had like $7,000 in his bank account made a $500,000 loan to his campaign. Fraud. And therefore, I think they were trying to cut a deal where he would plead guilty to a felony. I don't think the prosecutors in the Eastern District will take less. And they were in talks. They told the judge last month, we're in talks with Santos and his co-conspirator Mealy, and with the treasurer. Treasurer pled guilty, is cooperating. Those deals fell apart, and the prosecutors, as prosecutors are wont to be, they filed a superseding, or what we call it, like an amended indictment, which lists 10 new felonies against Santos. I'll read them off quickly just for completion. 1 count of conspiracy against the United States, 2 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of false statements to the Federal Election Commission, 2 counts of false records to the Federal Election Commission, 2 counts of aggravated identification theft, 1 count of access device theft, and of course the big tools for the prosecutors, wire fraud, which is usually an email or some other, or wire, or money transfer that is using electronic transfer methods, and that becomes wire fraud. So that's pissed off not the entire group of New York Republicans. Yes, there are New York Republicans in the House, and a handful of them have brought a resolution to the House floor at present, like today, to try to remove George Santos. Absent from that group is Elise Stefanik, who the wannabe Speaker of the House, although she was not part of the group apparently, as between Scalise and Jim Jordan that is being considered, but she's been the number 3 in the House leadership. She's been very open and obvious that she wants the speaker position one day, but she's not part of the group that wants to lose Santos because they're already having enough trouble. They're not governing as it is with Santos giving them one extra vote. Lord knows what'll happen if they lose another Republican vote. And so just out of pure greed and unadulterated lust for power, they're holding their nose and keeping Santos in his chair, despite the fact that the guy's going to go away to jail for a long time for all of these things. Karen, from your perspective, and then we'll sort of wrap up the show for today. What do you make of the plea deal falling apart, the response by the prosecutors, and what do you think ultimately is going to happen with George Santos?
Look, George Santos, as if he couldn't get any lower, this new indictment, boy, is this really made it so I don't think he has any wiggle room whatsoever. George Santos is really a terrible person, and what he really stole from the American people is the right to vote for a person and have them serve you. He is a complete fraud. Everything about him is a fraud. He's lied about everything from, whether he's a grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and that he had certain jobs, that he has certain degrees, he just lie. His entire resume is a bunch of lies. He's just not who he says he is, not who he held himself out to be. And the voters didn't vote for the person they thought they voted for. But much of that is, believe it or not a crime. It's just makes him a phony. And so when you get to what is it that he did that was a crime, some of it can be very technical, right? Some of it can be federal election laws that require donor disclosures above a certain amount. Are you a PAC, a super PAC, or an individual, et cetera? And that can be a little bit arcane and sometimes technical. And I worried a little bit about that with indictment number 1, but oh my God, the superseding indictment is just unbelievable in what it's alleging that he did. I think the biggest thing that is just he can never get away from is he stole money from people. Just flat out stole money. He didn't lie and say, oh, you're going to give me money for this, but I'm going to use it for that. He actually stole money. He got a hold of their identifying information, their financial information, their credit card numbers, and he just charged them without permission and took the money and used it to finance his luxury lifestyle. That's just theft. That is bald-faced theft. So, that to me was just crazy that is in this new indictment. He's already saying, oh, it wasn't me, somebody else did it. Of course, another lie, because because that one you can't get away from, right? You can't steal money and then somehow say, oh, I thought I could do it, or, it's a technical thing. That's just, like I said, that's just pure theft. So he's going to try to blame somebody else for that. But I don't think he's going to get away from that whatsoever. But, the rest of the indictment also just showed the extent of what his fraud was, right? It talked about how, in addition to stealing people's credit card and bank information and stealing money from them, he also lied about how much money he had in just documents in order to get matching funds from the Republican National Committee. And he just would make up numbers on pieces of paper. He'd say he had $500,000 in a bank account when he had $7,000. And, that's going to be easy to do, to prove that that's either true or not true.
Sounds like Donald Trump. They reverse engineer numbers. Like, well, how much do I need in order to get that bank loan? $4 billion in net worth, and then put my numbers down as $4 billion, and let's jack up the price. Santos, how much do I need in order to get the support of the RNC? $250,000 this quarter. Put it down. I'll put down a loan. You don't have that money. Doesn't matter. Put it down. We'll figure it out later. They're two peas of the pods, and they use the same language. Santos is like, it's a witch hunt. It's not a witch hunt if you're actually a witch. If you're, then it's just a hunt. And that's where we are with George Santos. But I don't think the Republicans, first of all, the five New York Republicans that seem to have grown a conscience, who are bringing this motion, it's going to go down in flames. There's no way. They can't even pick a speaker. They're not going to throw George Santos. It got some press. It was interesting before we went on the air to read about it. It's not going to go anywhere. He's going to, until he's indicted and taken away in handcuffs, and for pretrial detention or whatever it's going to be, and or he is defeated, which he's bound to be defeated by this district. I can't imagine this district voting for this guy again. I mean, I think anybody could run there and win, but
I think Ben's from this district.
Yeah, we should I don't want Ben to leave MeidasTouch, though. I mean, we keep saying Ben for Congress, Karen for president, Popok for attorney general. It's great. I like what I'm doing. I don't want to do any of that. I want to do what I'm doing here with you every week and midweek. Look, Santos is not going to be around come the next election. 2024, he's going to lose. I think Swazi, who used to have that seat, who ran unsuccessfully for Senate, is going to run for it again. I mean, a ham sandwich at this point could run and win in the 3rd district and defeat George Santos. But that doesn't mean justice has been done. Justice will be done when he is behind bars and thrown out of Congress, either by the voters or by people in his own party, if they ever have the brass ones in order to do that. If you liked what you just saw on that hot take, that little podlet, come watch our entire podcast on Wednesdays and Saturdays, only on the MeidasTouch Network, exclusively there on a podcast we call Legal AF. I do it with Karen on Wednesdays. I do it with Ben, Big Ben Mycelis from the MeidasTouch Network, and my co-founder on Legal AF. We do it on Saturday. We curate the best stories, top 5 of them at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, and we bring it to you just like that. So if you liked what you saw, tune in, free subscribe right here to the MeidasTouch Network. Help them get to 2 million subscribers. The bigger this network gets, grassroots as it is, the more your voice is heard. Until my next Legal AF, until my next hot take, this is Michael Popok, Legal AF.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.